Have you ever felt that inexplicable shiver when facing the unknown? I'm not just talking about the fear of darkness or unexplored places, but the dread of looking within yourself. What would happen if you delved into the darkest parts of your own mind? This hesitation in the face of the unknown is not just an instinctive reaction, but a barrier that prevents us from understanding who we truly are. Carl Jung, one of the greatest thinkers in psychology, believed that the fear of the unknown was largely the fear of our own shadow. For him, the shadow represented the repressed aspects of our personality, those traits we prefer to ignore because they scare or shame us. However, denying our own shadow does not make it disappear. On the contrary, it strengthens, acting unconsciously in shaping our choices without our awareness. The story of human fear dates back to the origins of civilization. Imagine a primitive man on the edge of a dense forest, hearing noises among the trees. He does not know what awaits him beyond the darkness. A predator? An enemy? The unknown has always been perceived as a threat, for what cannot be controlled awakens our vulnerability. This evolutionary response remains alive within us, but now takes new forms. We avoid difficult conversations, flee from introspection, and refuse to confront past traumas. Jung asserted that those who do not face their own shadow become its slaves. This concept resonates strongly in our modern lives. Think of someone who fears failure and, therefore, never tries anything new. Or that person who avoids any type of confrontation to avoid dealing with their own insecurities. We all know someone, or perhaps we are that person, who is trapped in a cycle of fear and stagnation. The question that haunts us, then, is, do we really know ourselves, or are we just hiding behind what is familiar and comfortable? The fear of the unknown may be imprisoning you in ways you can't even imagine. Our fear of the unknown goes beyond self-preservation. It is one of the greatest obstacles to individuation, the process of developing an authentic personality, according to Carl Jung. For him, individuation occurs when we confront the hidden aspects of our being and integrate both the light and the shadow of our psyche. But what prevents us from walking this path? The answer lies in our need for control and predictability. From childhood, we are shaped to follow social norms, to suppress impulses, and to maintain an identity consistent with what is expected of us. We create masks to adapt, avoiding any introspection that threatens this construction. It is here that the fear of the unknown becomes a fear of oneself. Jung described the psyche as an iceberg. Consciousness is just the visible tip, while the unconscious, vast and deep, remains hidden. However, ignoring this submerged part does not eliminate it. On the contrary, it manifests in subtle ways, in destructive behavior patterns, in inexplicable anxiety, or even in symbolic dreams that try to alert us to repressed aspects of our identity. The shadow is one of the most powerful elements of the unconscious. It represents everything we deny in ourselves: insecurities, unconfessable desires, traumas, repressed impulses. The more we deny our shadow, the more it projects into the external world, making us see in others what we do not accept in ourselves. This mechanism explains, for example, extreme intolerance. Those who deny their own flaws tend to pursue them in others, creating symbolic enemies to justify their internal frustrations. Freud, Jung's mentor and later rival, believed that the unconscious was a reservoir of repressed impulses, a repository of socially unacceptable desires. Jung, on the other hand, saw the unconscious as a territory of hidden wisdom, filled with symbols and archetypes that could guide the journey of self-knowledge. The fear of the unknown, therefore, should not be avoided but understood. It is a portal to a more authentic version of ourselves. The problem is that few have the courage to cross this boundary. The ego, that structure that gives us a sense of identity, fears losing control. And so, we remain trapped in a predictable yet limiting existence, never accessing our true potential. Since the dawn of civilization, the fear of the unknown has shaped narratives, mythologies, and beliefs. Ancient peoples created gods and demons to make sense of what they could not comprehend. The raging sea, storms, and diseases were attributed to invisible and unpredictable forces. The unknown, represented by chaos, was always a threat to be controlled. In Greek mythology, we find a classic example of this fear in the legend of Theseus and the Minotaur. The hero is forced to enter the labyrinth, a symbol of the unconscious, and confront the monstrous creature that resides within him. The Minotaur, half man and half beast, represents the shadow, that which has been hidden and repressed. Without a guiding thread, Theseus could get lost in the labyrinth forever, just as we can lose ourselves in our own minds if we do not know how to navigate its depths. This pattern repeats itself in various cultures. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, the story of Genesis illustrates the expulsion from paradise as a moment of confrontation with the unknown. Adam and Eve, by eating from the fruit of knowledge, emerge from ignorance and face a reality where they must deal with free will and the uncertainties of existence. The loss of innocence is both a burden and an opportunity for growth. Jung identified this recurrence of patterns as the manifestation of archetypes, universal structures of the collective unconscious. The archetype of the hero, for example, always faces a challenge that forces him to leave his comfort zone and transform. This journey occurs not only in myths but also in our lives. Every significant change, every new challenge, carries this same dilemma, to face the unknown or retreat to the safety of what we already know. But what about those who refuse the journey? In mythology, those who flee from the call of the unknown often suffer the consequences. In many stories, the hero who avoids their destiny ends up being pursued by their own fear. It is as if the unconscious, when ignored, finds ways to manifest itself, often in destructive ways. The question, then, is, are we doomed to repeat this cycle of escape and repression? Or can we learn to see the unknown not as a threat but as an invitation to transformation? If in ancient times the unknown was represented by gods and monsters, today it manifests in areas that challenge the limits of human knowledge. Quantum physics, for example, reveals a reality that escapes traditional logic. Subatomic particles behave unpredictably, existing in multiple states at the same time until they are observed. This principle, known as wave-particle duality, challenged the classical view of a stable and predictable universe. Carl Jung found surprising parallels between contemporary science and his psychology. In his correspondence with physicist Wolfgang Pauli, one of the pioneers of quantum mechanics, he discussed the idea of synchronicity, events that seem connected by meaning rather than by a causal relationship. For Jung, synchronicity showed that the unconscious could manifest in external reality, suggesting a connection between mind and matter. This idea resonates with modern neuroscience. Studies of the brain show that most of our cognition occurs unconsciously. We make decisions even before we are aware of them, and our perception of reality is filtered through internal processes that we do not understand. The fear of the unknown can then be understood as a natural reaction of the brain in the face of uncertainty. Experimental psychology also offers insights into this phenomenon. Psychiatrist Daniel Kahneman, in his study of human cognition, demonstrated that the brain prefers known patterns. Our cognitive system tends to seek predictability, which leads us to avoid situations that challenge our beliefs. This resistance to the unknown is a self-protection mechanism but can become an obstacle when it prevents us from evolving. If we connect this to Jungian thought, we realize that the fear of the unknown is not just an external limitation but a reflection of our own psyche. Science shows us that the human mind is not as reliable as we believe. Memories can be false, perceptions can be distorted, and beliefs can be limiting. What, then, should we do when we realize that our own mind deceives us? How can we accept uncertainty without being consumed by fear? The answer may lie in how we choose to deal with the complexity of the world and, primarily, with the unknown aspects within ourselves. Have you ever stopped to think about how many decisions in your life have been motivated by fear? The fear of the unknown is not just an abstract barrier, it silently seeps into our choices, limiting our dreams, relationships, and opportunities. Imagine someone who wants to change careers but hesitates because they fear the uncertain. Or someone who avoids a deep relationship out of fear of reliving past pain. These situations are common, and in them, we clearly see the influence of fear on our psyche. The unknown causes us to project catastrophic scenarios, convincing us that it is safer to stay where we are, even if that comfort zone is unsatisfactory. Jung teaches us that facing the unknown is essential for individuation. Ignoring this process leads to stagnation, while embracing it allows us to grow. But how does this manifest in everyday life? A clear example is how we deal with challenges and changes. People who fear the unknown often avoid conflict, procrastinate important decisions, and cling to rigid beliefs. These attitudes create an illusion of safety, but in reality, they only reinforce the feeling of entrapment. The fear of the unknown also reflects in self-destructive behavior patterns. Often, we avoid change not because it is impossible but because it requires us to confront parts of ourselves that we prefer to ignore. This explains why so many people remain in unsatisfying jobs, toxic relationships, or destructive habits. The alternative demands an internal confrontation that seems more frightening than the pain itself. The solution is not to eliminate fear but to learn to live with it. The unknown will never disappear, but we can change our relationship with it. When we accept uncertainty as a part of life, we become more resilient, more open to new experiences, and less hostage to the need for absolute control. The first step toward this change is to question, what are you avoiding? What part of you fears to look honestly? The answer may lie where we least expect it, hidden in the shadow, waiting for the right moment to emerge. If there is something Jung teaches us, it is that fleeing from the unknown within us is a mistake. The more we avoid looking at our shadow, the more it finds ways to manifest, whether in destructive behaviors, emotional crises, or even physical symptoms. But how do we face something we fear? The process of integrating the shadow is not simple. It requires courage to acknowledge uncomfortable truths about ourselves. It means admitting flaws, recognizing traumas, and accepting that we are not always who we would like to be. And here a dilemma arises. In confronting the unknown, we run the risk of losing the identity we have built over the years. Many people fear change because it means abandoning a part of what they believe they are. This is why some resist growth, even when they know they need to change. But what is truly lost in this process? Only illusions, masks, and fragile constructs that do not reflect who we really are. A clear example of this internal confrontation can be seen in times of crisis. When everything we knew crumbles, whether it's the loss of a job, the end of a relationship, or an unexpected turn of events, we are forced to face uncertainty. For Jung, these moments are precious opportunities. They pull us out of inertia and compel us to look within. Confronting the shadow does not mean surrendering to chaos, but learning to dialogue with it. It means acknowledging fear without allowing it to control us. When we open ourselves to the unknown within us, we discover potentials we never imagined. But what if we avoid this confrontation? The answer lies in countless examples of people living mechanical lives, repeating patterns, trapped in a routine that does not satisfy them. They believe they are safe, but in reality, they are only postponing an inevitable confrontation. The truth is that the unknown will never disappear. It will always be waiting for us, whether in the next big decision, the next challenge, or the thoughts we avoid having. And the only way to free ourselves from the fear of ourselves is to face it head-on. If we understand that the fear of the unknown confines us, then the question arises, what if, instead of fearing it, we learn to see it as an opportunity? Jung teaches us that what we avoid contains exactly what we need to grow. The unknown is not just an enemy, it can be the portal to our true freedom. Individuation, the central process of Jungian psychology, is not just a journey of self-knowledge, but of reconciliation with what we fear within ourselves. At some point in life, we all face crises that make us question who we really are. Some resist, fleeing discomfort and clinging to fragile certainties. Others accept the challenge and discover that on the other side of fear, there is something much greater, the expansion of consciousness. But what does it mean, in practice, to transform the unknown into freedom? First, it means recognizing that uncertainty is inevitable. No life is completely safe or predictable, and trying to control everything is a futile effort. When we accept this, we stop fighting against the tide and learn to navigate uncertainties with more serenity. Second, it means changing our relationship with fear. The fear of the unknown paralyzes us because we believe it will lead us to suffering. But often, what truly makes us suffer is not the unknown itself, but our resistance to it. Accepting the unknown does not mean diving into chaos without direction, but trusting that even without knowing exactly what awaits us, we have the capacity to handle whatever comes our way. Finally, it means accepting that the journey never ends. Self-knowledge is not a final destination, but a continuous process. There will always be new shadows to integrate, new challenges to face, and new versions of ourselves to discover. The fear of the unknown can imprison, but it can also liberate. It all depends on how we choose to see it. What once seemed like an endless abyss can reveal itself as a portal to a fuller and more authentic existence. But for that, we must take a first step, the step inward. Now that we have reached the end of this journey, the inevitable question is, what will you do with this knowledge? The fear of the unknown has always been present in humanity, but the way we deal with it defines who we become. You can continue avoiding what scares you, clinging to old certainties and comfortable routines. Or you can accept the invitation that Jung gives us, the invitation to look within and discover what truly resides in your mind and soul. The decision to face the unknown is never easy. The path of self-knowledge is not linear and often can be uncomfortable. But what is at stake is much greater than just overcoming superficial fears, it is about your own freedom. As long as you allow fear to control your choices, your life will be governed by unconscious impulses, repeating patterns you never questioned. Jung believed that true transformation only occurs when we become aware of what was once hidden. This is the purpose of individuation, to integrate the shadow, recognize our contradictions, and accept that we are complex beings. This does not mean eliminating fear, but learning to use it as a compass. Many go through life never questioning themselves. They follow paths laid out by others, avoid internal conflicts, and conform to what is known. But there are those who choose the harder path, the path of seeking meaning. These are the ones who dare to lose themselves to find themselves, those who trade the security of ignorance for the freedom of self-knowledge. And you? Are you ready to take that step? The unknown will not disappear, but you can change the way you face it. Instead of seeing it as a threat, try to see it as an opportunity. Behind fear may lie the most authentic version of yourself, waiting to be discovered. If this reflection resonated with you, share your experience. What challenges you most when it comes to facing the unknown? Leave your comment and let's continue this conversation. If this content resonated with you, like and subscribe for more reflections like this. The unknown will always be there. The choice to face it, however, is yours.